Well, welcome back to the Canadian Virtual Lawyers Conference. My name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. I'll be starting the panel just in a minute or so. I just want to make sure people are just coming on to the right spot. You are on the main stage watching today. Thank you very much for attending today's event. Hopefully you've had a chance to network and hear some of the sessions that we've had a chance to go into the networking area, into the expo. So lots of great stuff. We actually do add on another 10 minutes at the end of today's event from 4 o'clock Eastern time to 4:10 Eastern time that you can have a chance to check out the networking area if you haven't already, as well as go into the expo area also. So thanks very much for participating. The wrap up of today's event is our panel, and I'm excited to be joined by three great lawyers. So I'm going to start with Madeleine Loewenberg, employment and labor lawyer, Loewenberg, Psarris Workplace Law. Hope I said that right, Madeleine, right?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. I always like to spell things out phonetically. So thanks very much for being on here. Madeleine, maybe you can tell a little bit about yourself to those watching, a bit of what you practice in, and a little bit about your background, about yourself and your organization as well.
Sure, happy to. So Loewenberg Psarris is a boutique labor and employment firm. We act primarily on behalf of management. I've been practicing law for about the past 19 years now. Our practice touches on anything that relates to the employment and labor relationship, and primarily for employers. So from drafting employment policies, employment agreements, conducting litigation in respect of human rights, health and safety, wrongful dismissal work, anything along those lines, training, drafting policies, and now more recently, more often I should say, workplace investigations as well. I am Lexpert ranked. I'm also listed to best lawyers in Canada, and I enjoy what I do. I've got a great business partner, and we have a nice practice, and we like our practice area.
Excellent. Thanks for being on. And Rachel Sachs is lawyer for the seniors and aging clients, or for seniors and aging clients at Sachs Law Professional Corporation. Rachel, welcome back to our platform as always. And perhaps you can also let people know a little bit about yourself and about your firm as well.
Thanks, Marc. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me again. So I am a seniors lawyer, and that means that I do my best to alleviate the pressures of the legal system on seniors in Ontario, whatever issue they may be facing, so that they can focus on living their best life and doing what they want to do as they age. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell, really. And I'm happy to talk more to people offline if they have any specific questions about the sorts of work we do, because the list can be long. I got into law to help people, so that's what I'm trying to do. Terrific.
And where are you located, Rachel, for people to know?
I'm in North York.
North York. And do y'all cover across Canada, Ontario?
Mostly Ontario, but I do have clients who are overseas as well, who have ties to Ontario for various reasons. I've had clients in the Philippines, clients in the States. And I do work virtually, which can sometimes be a challenge with my target clients, but when it's possible, it just allows me to serve more people, and it's great. Works out well.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for being on, and we'll come back. Andrew Carvajal is a partner and lawyer, head of economic immigration at Desloges Law Group. Thanks, Andrew, also for being on again, and welcome. And perhaps you can do the same also, give people an idea as to what kind of law you practice and your firm and your background.
Sure, and thanks, Marc, for the invitation. So I am a partner at Desloges Law Group. We're an immigration boutique, and we do all kinds of Canadian immigration cases, but the different lawyers at the firm specialize in different things. So I do what's called economic immigration. So basically, I help companies bring people to Canada and do their work permits. I also help people who want to come to study in Canada with their study permits. And then another big part of our practice is, or the team that I lead, is basically workers and former international students and entrepreneurs who want to transition to permanent residence. So that's basically what economic immigration is about. We work with clients all over the world. I actually have like 5 different offices right now. I'm in the Flatiron building, which is our main office in downtown Toronto. But I spend time between Toronto and Colombia, where we also have another office in Bogota. So basically, it's between here, the cottage when we're in Canada, and where I'm in Colombia, it's between a house that we have in the coffee region and our office in Bogota. So I've been very used to like the whole virtual work for quite a while, and in immigration, it works really well. Yeah, that's mainly what we do. And well, we're originally from Colombia, but I've been living in Canada or between Canada and Colombia for the last 19 years.
Perfect. So quite a variety of people on the panel here. So trying to find common similarities between all of you might be a little bit tricky. So we'll cover different topics nonetheless. And by the way, if you have any questions for anybody on the panel, feel free to put them in the event or in this stage chat or in the Q&A, and I'll moderate questions that may come up. So maybe we'll start with Madeleine. And you talked about employment law and issues with returning to work. And obviously that's been a key forefront. I think the stats are something like 80% of people want to be able to work from home. After this, I think Statistics Canada put out a study not that long ago. So maybe talk about that and maybe what the issues might be from a legal perspective and from an employer perspective on both sides in terms of what companies can do, what they should do about getting their staff to come back, and maybe issues that you're seeing. What if somebody refuses? Can they be terminated? Should they be terminated? So what are you seeing on that front?
Sure. So from the non-legal perspective, because realistically, some of what we do when we're management side employment lawyers is we advise on the law, and then we also advise on what makes the business better. The easy answer is the employer can ask people to come back to work and can expect them to come back to work. And I agree, there are a lot of people who like to work from home and would prefer it. And the preference won't trump what the employer wants to do in terms of running its business. The flip side to that is a lot of employers, they want to engage in some kind of balance because they still do have a workforce that they want to keep engaged. And even they, as in the employer, may not know what the landscape looks like now or 6 months from now, be it with COVID or workflow or otherwise. So a lot of what we're being asked to do is to create work from home policies that talk about, this discretionary nature of being permitted to work from home, that talk about the right to recall the employee, that it set expectations around hours of work and the use of technology. And it's really important now because if you are an employer or if you're listening now and you practice any employment law, you'll know that there is some case law that says that if you allow some of these gratuitous benefits and they sort of stretch on and employees come to expect them to remain as a term and condition, that it can be difficult to pull them back without a constructive dismissal. So a lot of the policy work we do is around those expectations, making sure that people don't take the opportunity to work from home to create new working hours, which is really easy to do. And I think most of us have probably done that to some extent, but we need to be able to get in touch with our employees. We need them not to be working day and night so we don't have unanticipated overtime claims or suggestions that people aren't taking breaks when they're meant to be taking them. So there's actually quite a bit that goes into this kind of thought process, both around whether or not you should let someone still work from home or not, and the terms and conditions on which you're going to allow them to do so. We see a lot about that right now. And then, depending on how long you want to let me go on for, a lot too around the health and safety implications of having people come back who may or may not be vaccinated, and what kind of bandwidth we have to ask questions of our employees around that. And I'll say you've got more latitude to ask questions around vaccination that I think a lot of employers expect that they have. It's what you do with the information that you have to be careful of in terms of safeguarding it or sharing it.
Mm-hmm. A lot of employees are just offering it voluntarily. Hey, I got my shot, I didn't get my shot, or I don't believe in getting a shot, or I'm fully vaccinated, right? Like, so.
Well, that's right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yes, some people will voluntarily offer it. You can ask. I know there are articles out there that say it's a privacy issue if you ask. In the employment context, because privacy legislation applies in a lot of places, but it applies a little differently in the employment context. In the employment context, you can ask someone if they're vaccinated. If they say either they're not, or if they refuse to answer, I would treat them as if they're not vaccinated. And then you have to decide what to do with your unvaccinated population. You can't tell them they can't come to work in most cases. That in itself can be a constructive dismissal if there's other ways that you can bring them back and ensure safety of the general population. If you can't bring them back in a way that ensures the safety of the general population, you may have a competing interest, and that's around the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and the duty to take all reasonable precautions for the health and safety of your workers. So it's actually a super interesting area, and there's a lot of competing interests at play. But employers have probably more latitude than they think they have, but some practical limitations around what they can do with the information they collect too.
Now, is it a question that is allowed to be asked during an interview, for example? Are you vaccinated?
So the difficulty around asking these questions in interviews is if someone is rejected for the job opportunity, and if the reason they haven't got vaccinated is due to a disability under the Ontario Human Rights Code, then they may say, in fact, they were rejected for employment for a reason related to a protected ground under the code. That's problematic for the employer. And there may be other reasons why they were rejected for the role, and you may be able to demonstrate what those other reasons are, but you may be opening yourself to that allegation that there's a human rights basis for having not taken the vaccination and therefore having not been hired. I will say, though, that it is not a protected ground under the code to simply refuse to get vaccinated. People's personal preferences aren't a legitimate basis on which to claim protection under the code and to say, well, I have a right, I'm putting it in air quotes, not to get vaccinated. I suppose you have a right to do whatever you want, but you may not find that you have the protections you expect to have if really what you've done is articulated a personal preference, as opposed to a medically validated reason for not being able to take the vaccination. And those cases will be few and far between.
Right. Good point. So we're going to come back with some more questions for you as well, Madeleine. So that's great to share. And Rachel, you're involved with seniors and seniors in Ontario. A lot of people, including myself, have older parents. So what are the things that, from different perspectives, of course, from a legal perspective, someone should be aware of who has maybe a senior in Ontario, and also from a practical perspective, and maybe they're in a home or whatever. What are you seeing? What are maybe some of the cases, situations that you're seeing, maybe that you're comfortable sharing as well?
So I mean, a lot of what I do, what comes up is you have a situation where a senior is in a relationship where there's some sort of abuse by often a family member. And these situations are particularly difficult because, one, the litigation involved is extremely expensive. Most people can't afford to pursue it. And if they can't afford to pursue it, often they don't want to because there's a lot of emotion involved, and nobody wants to sue their children or their relatives for obvious reasons, especially when you just kind of want to try and live out your life, right? So that's one definite issue. And I mean, I think you see this regardless of where the person is residing, whether they're in a home or in their own home. One thing that I'm trying to do and trying to build with my practice is a way to engage other professionals to work with seniors to deal with the issues. Sometimes not even in a legal context, because sometimes there are other solutions that are a little bit better and also cheaper. I think people really need to consider when they take on certain roles. If say your parent wants to make you the attorney for their property or for personal care, you need to really get educated on what that means and what you're actually required to do in those positions of power over somebody, and when you should be acting, and how and what how you're going to engage with the person who's giving you power of attorney, because that person has every right to be consulted with throughout the process. And you should continue to do that, and you should be you should only be using your power in so far as is necessary to do what is necessary for their care or for the decisions that they can no longer make for themselves. I think something that people really need to bear in mind whenever you're dealing with any kind of senior capacity issue is that you want to help them to maintain as much independence as possible going forward. And obviously there are different levels. It can be very difficult, but I think, at least this might be me more personally as well, that you want to build a situation where you are giving them as much autonomy as is reasonably possible in the circumstances. And that's really hard to do. So that's what we try to help families get to that point. And there are other things to do other than litigation. Mediation is one option that I think people should look at a little bit more when it comes to navigating elder and family relationships. And I think as well, when we're talking about care homes, you can often negotiate those contracts. So bear that in mind if you're putting or changing homes, and you might want to get someone to look at that and look at what you're agreeing to. And that's all I'm going to say on that matter. But
that's good to know. Really good to know. Thanks for sharing that. Really interesting. It's really interesting topics, right? Because you hear the stories that make the news and about elder abuse and things like that, and it's very difficult, very challenging, of course, right? So, and that's the worst that could happen, obviously, right? So, okay, terrific. Well, my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. The panelists that I have: Madeleine Loewenberg is employment and labor lawyer, Loewenberg Psarris Workplace Law LLP, Rachel Sachs is lawyer for seniors and aging clients, Sachs Law Professional Corporation, and Andrew Carvajal is partner and lawyer, head of economic immigration at Desloges Law Group. So thanks for the three of you for being here. And if you have any questions for anyone on the panel, feel free to put them in the event or in the stage chat, and I'll be happy to moderate. So over to you, Andrew. And I'm trying to make the topics as broad as possible because we have such a variety of panel expertise on the panel here. So Andrew, want to bring over a lawyer from another country, for example. Just let's use lawyer as an example, but just we're bringing somebody over from another country. Kind of maybe a very high level walk through the steps as to what it is required these days. What are the challenges that somebody might have, or a law firm or otherwise? And what you're noticing. What are some of the trends?
Yeah, I mean it's been quite a complicated year with the border closures, and obviously those of us who do immigration have been just having to every week keep up with what's happening and kind of what the new measures that the government has been instituting to try to, at the end of the day, protect the public health of the country, right? So I mean, luckily though, I mean, to some extent, people are still moving workers around. So I thought that was going to die a lot, but people are still bringing talent, even though a lot of people are still working remotely. We're busy with a lot of people who were changing their status in Canada as well and applying for permanent residence, or they were out of status and they needed to restore their status. But I think kind of one of the most positive things that I saw last year and this year as well is that Canada has done a lot to accommodate immigrants during this pandemic. So while maybe south of the border and other countries in Europe and other places were taking this very protectionist rhetoric when the pandemic struck, Canada was about, okay, we know that there's people stranded here. Let's try to fix their status. We know that there's students who are not able to travel to Canada. Let's try to make sure they have the same benefits when they graduate, even if they study remotely. There's people who, I think we lost Marc for a second, but I'll just continue assuming that we're still live. There's people who were basically were not able to complete the work experience that they had to complete, and then the government has done. Hi, Marc. I think we have you back now.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was here, but somehow the.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no. So yeah, a lot of people who might not have been able to complete the work experience because they were laid off or something like that. So the government has done things to accommodate them as well, and it's been interesting. Looking forward to restrictions being eased finally. It seems like next month, starting August 9, we're going to start to see vaccinated visitors from the US coming in. So that's a big development. And then mid-September, probably also optional travel from outside of the US for vaccinated visitors coming in. And so that's part of what's been happening. In terms of your other question of bringing lawyers for lawyers coming to Canada, it depends. There's so many, there's people who are very young, they're lawyers, so they have like good education, they're very good in English or French, so they're able to navigate programs for permanent residence right away. There's other people who do it through studies, especially a lot of lawyers want to become accredited, or they want to be able to write the bar exam and become lawyers in Canada. So they do, for instance, masters to, they might be internationally trained lawyers that do masters to be able to do the National Committee of Accreditation process and then be able to get their license in Canada. So that's one way that they transition to permanent residence. And then obviously there's some mobility between countries too, through treaties, free trade agreements and things like that, that we move lawyers here as well. But unfortunately, as any regulated profession, it's one of those when you're coming from abroad, if you do want to practice law, you have to go through a lot of hoops, and some of them are immigration, but others are just the way that the profession is regulated at the provincial level to eventually be able to do what you want to do.
Excellent. So I know each of you have specialized in a certain area. I know we have lawyers that are watching who are experienced and less experienced. So what would you give to younger lawyers who maybe are just starting up their careers or are kind of deciding which direction maybe if they want to specialize or not? Like what made each of you specialize in the areas that you did, and what maybe did you think about what are some of the considerations they had? So kind of open to anybody to answer.
Sure. Go ahead, Andrew.
Okay. Maybe I'll just give two pieces of advice. One of them would be, don't freak out. I feel like lawyers were trained to like have this like 5-year, 10-year life plan and expect that we're gonna be doing litigation or this or that or corporate law. And like when it doesn't play out, then we enter into like this crisis and we don't know what we want to do with our lives and stuff like that. And I think most times, and I mean, this was my experience and it's been the experience of some of my colleagues, like someone like Rachel who ended up in like a very like specialized area. This might not be what you want to do all your life, but like you kind of like ended up there. I mean, I don't know, but one thing would be, don't freak out if things don't go as planned. And other would be, I mean, I find sometimes it's just coincidences that lead you to where you end. I wanted to be a litigation lawyer all my life. I didn't like it after being there for like a year. I was doing a wine class, which is something that I really like. And there was an immigration lawyer there who told me about immigration law. And I was like, wow, this sounded interesting. And that I eventually like ended up in the field where I wanted to do. So I think sometimes it's just more, I know it's hard to say this because people who want to have everything planned, but sometimes it's just the people, you know, coincidences and things like that end up like leading to the path and not so much all the planning that you do. So just be open and don't freak out when things don't work out the way they're supposed to.
That's good advice. Yeah, Madeleine, you were going to say as well?
Yeah, my comments weren't going to be that much different, to be honest. For anyone who's a more junior lawyer on the chat, I would say that if you've been told, especially early in your career, that your path must be, you know, for example, if you think you want to be at a Bay Street law firm, that you need to get out of law school and go do that right away, or you'll never get to do that. Or, you know, if you want to open your own law firm, you'd better have business acumen and take some business courses. I would say don't necessarily listen to that. I hate to say that, but I came out of law school. I was hired into a law firm that at the time had 4 people. You know, it grew to 8 or 10 before I left, and I went to Bay Street, and I was there for a few years as a partner. And then ultimately, my law partner, Psarris, and I decided what we really wanted to do was run our own law firm. And there was no predetermined course. And I think if I had listened to people who had said, you know, if you don't go to Bay Street right out of law school, you'll never get there, I might have just closed that opportunity to myself. As for why you should or should not specialize, or why I did, I mean, I articled at a boutique labor and employment firm. I knew early on. And I knew because I went to law school with no exposure to other lawyers and other law firms, and took all the courses and only felt passionate about labor and employment, and it stuck, and I loved it, and I still love it. And I was happy to specialize and glad I did. If you specialize and change your mind, I have a friend who changed her mind. She went from corporate to tax to labor. It's not super easy once you get further into your career because people do have certain expectations around your ability to be able to pick up a file and run, but it is not impossible. So to Andrew's point, don't close doors for yourself and continue to find things that make you happy, and you will.
Excellent. Great advice from both of you. So I want to, we have just a few minutes left here. So I want to just kind of cover one more topic, and that is technology. We all know about Zoom and FaceTime and so on. Is there any technology that you're comfortable sharing? Maybe something new on the time billing front, dockets, anything that you'd like to share, you'd like to talk about? You want to have maybe ask the other panelists a question about it, whatever, throwing it out there to anybody to answer.
So I'd love to jump in here because I love technology. It's actually probably a little bit of a detriment because I always want to try new things. But when you're searching for technology, keep in mind, what do you need it for? And don't just get it because you like it, which I definitely have been at fault at on occasion. But also there's quite a range out there, and there is a lot that is affordable. So if you're, say, a young lawyer starting out and you don't necessarily need all the bells and whistles of Clio and Cosmolex, there's a great Canadian alternative in ULaw, which, gets better all the time, and they have excellent support. So I am just going to plug that there because their support is actually the best that I've ever experienced from any kind of practice management software. Although it may not be the best for people who are not technologically friendly. But I mean, use what you get, especially as a younger lawyer starting out. Use what you've got. Don't go spending all your money at once. I am a big fan of Office 365 in some respects, but I absolutely hate Outlook. But you know what? It's a package, and I'm going to use it as much as possible. Mm-hmm. Those are my tips.
Awesome. Madeleine or Andrew, anything to add?
We, Betty and I, before COVID hit, we're already trying to largely operate virtually. We do have an office, but we try not to rely on it, mostly for the flexibility of our clients. And because we're employer side, we tend to go to them, as opposed to requiring them to leave their places of businesses to meet with us. It's practical. And so we also have long relied on technology. I would probably say the platforms that everyone else is using for social media, including platforms like this one, where you can hop on and interact with folks. I think it's going to become more and more the norm, including for litigation matters. It's definitely cost effective. I would say do not be afraid of it. I did a whole piece of litigation with the Labor Board by what is effectively their Zoom platform, and it worked great. And you can figure it out even if you think you can't.
Excellent. Well, terrific. Well, we just have a couple of minutes left here, so I'm just going to wrap it up. But I want to thank you all for being on the panel here. Thanks to everybody for coming to the Canadian Virtual Lawyers Conference presented by TorontoJobs.ca and TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca and powered by EventLogic with a K.ca. My name is Marc Belaiche, president of TorontoJobs.ca. The panelists, Madeleine Loewenberg, employment and labor lawyer from Loewenberg, Psarris Workplace Law LLP, Rachel Sachs, lawyer for seniors and aging clients, Sachs Law Professional Corporation, and Andrew Carvajal, partner and lawyer, head of economic immigration at Desloges Law Group. Thanks very much to all of you for being here. How did you like the event? Let us know. We'll be sending you a survey to complete after the event. I also want to thank all the speakers and the team. Alex, especially, great job. Rachel, amazing. And Sandra, Sarah, Carla, a lot of people behind the scenes who are running the event. So I want to thank you all for being part of this. TorontoJobs.ca. If you do have any staffing needs or you want to discuss anything to do with hiring, feel free to reach out to me or email sales@TorontoJobs.ca. TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca. If you are an entrepreneur, you want to find out about upcoming events that is involved with Toronto Entrepreneurs, and EventLogic again with .ca, logic with a K.ca. If you'd like to sponsor, exhibit at, or speak at an upcoming event, visit the website EventLogic with a K.ca. As well, we have some great upcoming events. You can visit TorontoJobs.ca/news. That's TorontoJobs.ca/NEWS for more information. There's also the upcoming Canadian Virtual Sell Your Business Conference coming up on Tuesday, July 27th, so next week. The Canadian Virtual Presidents Conference happens Wednesday, August 4th. And finally, the Toronto Entrepreneurs Conference happens on Thursday, August 19th. Now, these are just three of many, many upcoming events that you want to participate in as well. Follow us on our TorontoJobs.ca YouTube channels and our social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And also connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And reminder, TorontoJobs.ca is also looking for a fractional lawyer dealing with corporate law, terms and conditions, employment agreements, stock option plans, and so on, about 1 to 5 hours a week. So if you or anybody you know is interested, feel free to reach out. And as I mentioned earlier, we do tack on an extra 10 minutes at the end here that you can still have time to go into the expo area and into the networking as well if you'd like to spend a little bit more time in those areas and meet someone else. So again, thanks to everybody. Thanks to all the speakers. Thanks to the three of you on the panel. And wish you safe and happy returns to whatever it is in the future that we're going through. So thanks very much. And everybody stay safe and be well.
Okay. Thank you, Marc.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.